like he was about 2 seconds from collapsing anyway. But before leaving, he turned to me and said, "You should check the storage unit." Then he walked out into the rain. Storage unit. I didn't even know we had a storage unit. I thought Derek was messing with me at first. A storage unit? It sounded so random compared to everything else that my exhausted brain almost rejected it automatically. But then I looked at my wife. And she had that same expression again. That tiny flicker of panic she couldn't fully hide. That was becoming the pattern of the night. I'd hear something insane, look at her face, and immediately know it was true before she even spoke. I asked her one question. "What's in the storage unit?" She crossed her arms instantly. "Nothing. He's trying to manipulate you. You seriously believe every drunk thing he says?" Notice how she never actually answered the question. I asked again. This time louder. And finally she admitted there was a storage unit but claimed it just had old furniture and personal stuff. At that point I trusted her less than a spam email promising free money. I found the key in her purse after she refused to tell me where the unit was. And yes, before anybody lectures me about privacy, I was way past caring about privacy at this point. The address was about 20 minutes away. I said I was going. She immediately tried stopping me. "It's almost 5 a.m. You're exhausted. This is unhealthy." Unhealthy. That word almost made me black out from anger. I left anyway. And here's the part that really messed me up. She followed me. Not because she wanted honesty. Not because she wanted to fix things. Because she was terrified of what I'd find alone. The drive there felt unreal. Neither of us spoke. Rain hitting the windshield. Streetlights reflecting off wet roads. My hands gripping the steering wheel so hard they cramped. At one red light, I looked over at her and barely recognized the person sitting beside me. This was someone I shared a decade with. And suddenly she felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face. When we finally got there, she made one last attempt to stop me. "Please don't do this." I ignored her and unlocked the unit. At first glance, it really did look normal. Boxes. Furniture. Winter clothes. Random household junk. For one split second I actually wondered if I'd lost my mind. Then I noticed the photo frames. Dozens of them. Turned face down. That alone was creepy enough. I flipped one over. It was a picture of my wife and Derek. At a beach I'd never been to. Smiling like a couple. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd collapse right there. Then I found more. Cabin trips. Restaurant selfies. Holiday lights downtown. A hotel mirror picture with his arms around her waist. Entire memories. An entire hidden relationship carefully boxed away like some secret second life. And then I found the worst thing in the whole unit. A small unopened gift bag. With baby clothes inside. Neutral colors. Tiny socks. A stuffed elephant. And attached to it was a note in my wife's handwriting. "Can't wait for our little disaster." I just stood there holding that gift bag for a long time. Long enough that my hands started shaking from the cold in the storage unit and not just everything else. A baby elephant stuffed animal. Tiny socks. A note in her handwriting. "Can't wait for our little disaster." It didn't feel real. It felt staged. Like I'd walked into someone else's life by mistake. Behind me, my wife finally spoke in a voice I'd never heard before. Small. Careful. Please put that down. Not angry this time. Not defensive. Just scared. That scared me more than anything she'd done all night. I turned around and asked her. "Whose baby clothes are these?" Silence. And for the first time since all of this started, she didn't have a fast answer ready. That alone told me everything. She sat down on one of the dusty boxes like her legs gave out. Ran her hands through her hair. Looked exhausted in a way I hadn't seen before, like the lies were finally too heavy to hold up. I didn't know how to tell you, she said quietly. That sentence again. I didn't know how to tell you. The excuse she used for everything. Cheating. Lying. Money. Pregnancy. All of it. I asked her straight up if the baby clothes were from my pregnancy. She shook her head immediately. No. Then a pause. Too long. It wasn't that simple. Of course it wasn't. Because now she finally started talking, not the angry version, not the victim version, but something in between that sounded almost human. She said the pregnancy happened at the worst possible overlap of everything. Me. Derek. And apparently a third guy she barely admitted existed unless forced. She said she panicked. She didn't know who the father was. She froze. And instead of telling anyone the truth, she hid it. Behind lies. Behind distance. Behind pretending everything was normal. I asked her why she kept the baby clothes. Her answer was worse than I expected. I thought I might still keep it, she whispered. Not our future. Not your child. Not anything connected to me. Just it. Like a concept she was still deciding what to do with. I felt something inside me finally snap into something very calm. Not rage. Just finality. I told her I wanted the truth. All of it. No interruptions. And she started confessing things I think she had been carrying for months. She admitted she never stopped at just Derek. There were moments she used other people for validation when things got stressful between us. She admitted she lied even when it wasn't necessary anymore, just because it became easier than stopping. And then she said something that stuck in my head. At some point I didn't even know which version of my life was real anymore. That should have made me feel sympathy. But all I felt was distance. Because I realized something important sitting in that cold storage unit surrounded by fake memories. She hadn't just been lying to me. She'd been building a completely separate life and trying to keep both running at the same time. And I had been the one who stayed in the dark version. I looked at her and said, "So what now?" And she didn't answer right away. She just looked at all the boxes. Like she was finally seeing the full weight of what she'd done laid out in front of her. And then she said the one thing I never expected to hear. "I think we should go home, and decide what we are." But for me, something had already ended right there in that storage unit. The drive back felt completely different. Same road. Same rain. Same headlights cutting through the dark. But nothing felt connected anymore. She tried talking a few times. Started sentences, stopped them, started again. At one point she even reached for my hand like it was automatic muscle memory. I pulled away without thinking. That alone made the car go silent. Back at the house, we didn't even turn on the lights at first. Just stood in the hallway like strangers deciding who gets to exist there. She finally said, "I don't want to lose everything." And I actually believed her. But I also realized something important in that moment. She didn't mean me. She meant the life. The house. The stability. The version of things she could still present to the world. Not the actual person sitting across from her. I asked her what she thought fixing this even looked like. She immediately started listing things. Counseling. Time apart. Rebuilding trust. Like trust was a cracked phone screen you could just replace. I stopped her. "I need you to understand something," I said. She went quiet. I told her I couldn't live in a reality where I didn't know what was true anymore. Where every memory might be edited. Where I'd have to wonder if the next conversation was real or another performance. She started crying again. But this time it didn't pull me in. It just happened in front of me, like weather. Then she said, "I never stopped loving you." And I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "You don't do what you did to someone you love," I said. She tried to interrupt. I didn't let her. I told her I was done trying to decode her version of events. That I wasn't going to compete with alternate lives, hidden relationships, or rewritten histories anymore. And for the first time, she didn't argue. She just stood there, breathing hard, like she was waiting for a different outcome that wasn't coming. Eventually she asked quietly, "So you're leaving?" And I realized I'd already made that decision hours ago. Maybe even days ago. Maybe the moment I heard her say, "I miss you too," in the kitchen was the real ending and everything after was just me catching up to it. I said yes. She didn't scream. Didn't beg. Just nodded slowly like she'd known it was coming but refused to believe it until I said it out loud. Then she walked upstairs and closed the bedroom door. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt like it belonged to me again. Even if it was ending. The next morning didn't feel like morning. More like the aftermath of something I barely survived. She was already up when I came downstairs. Sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee she wasn't drinking, just holding it like it anchored her to something real. We didn't say, "Good morning." We didn't say anything for a while. The silence wasn't tense anymore. It was just final. Eventually she spoke first. "I'll stay somewhere else." Simple. No drama. No begging. That surprised me more than anything else she'd done. I nodded. That was all I could manage. She started packing later that day. Not the frantic kind of packing from the night before, this was slower. More careful. Like she was trying not to disturb the reality of the house while removing herself from it. Every item she touched felt loaded with history. A hoodie I used to love seeing her wear. A mug we bought on a trip years ago. Random little things that suddenly felt like artifacts from a life that wasn't stable anymore. At one point she held up a framed photo of us from our anniversary 2 years ago. We looked happy. Genuinely happy. And she just stared at it for a long time. Then she put it face down in the box. I remember thinking, that's probably the most honest thing she's done in months. She paused at the doorway before leaving. Like she wanted to say something that could undo everything that happened. Instead she just said, "I didn't want it to end like this." And I believed her. But I also didn't care anymore. Because intent doesn't cancel damage. After she left, the house didn't feel empty right away. It felt unfamiliar. Like it was still waiting for her routines. Her noise. Her presence. The version of life that used to fill every corner. I sat on the couch for hours doing nothing. No phone. No TV. Just thinking. Not about revenge. Not about anger. Just trying to understand how someone can build an entire second life and still look you in the eyes every day without breaking. And the worst realization hit me slowly. She didn't wake up one day and become a different person. She had been changing for a long time. I just didn't notice soon enough. That night I got a text from her. First one since she left. "I hope you know I did love you. In my own messed up way." I stared at it for a long time. Didn't reply. Because I finally understood something I wish I understood earlier. Some truths don't fix anything. They just arrive too late. A few days passed after she moved out, and the silence started to feel less like emptiness and more like clarity. The house stopped feeling like it was holding its breath. I went through the storage unit again alone that weekend. Not because I expected more surprises, but because my brain needed to be sure there wasn't another hidden layer waiting to collapse on me. There wasn't. Just boxes. Photos. Pieces of a life that had been carefully split into two versions. I ended up sitting on the floor of that unit for almost an hour, just looking at everything. At one point I actually laughed a little. Not because anything was funny. Because it was absurd how normal it all looked in hindsight. Like if you arranged lies neatly enough, they could pass as a life. I started sorting things into piles without thinking too hard about it. Keep. Donate. Throw away. And I noticed something strange as I worked through it. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. It had burned out into something quieter. Grief, maybe. Or just exhaustion with no fuel left behind it. Later that night, I got another message from her. I started therapy. I didn't respond. The next week, another one came. I'm sorry I dragged you into my chaos. Still nothing from me. Then one more. I missed the version of us that was real. That one stayed on my screen longer than I expected. Because I realized I missed that version too. But I also realized something else. That version didn't exist anymore. Maybe it never existed in the way I thought it did. Just moments that felt real while they were happening. I finally replied to her the next day. One sentence. Take care of yourself. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just closure dressed up as politeness. After that, she stopped texting for a while. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I slept through the night without waking up thinking I'd missed another piece of the truth. It felt weird. Like my body was finally learning how to exist without waiting for the next shock. But there was still one thing I couldn't stop thinking about. Not her. Not Derek. Not the lies. Just this question that kept circling back whenever I was alone. How much of a relationship is real, if you were the only one living in it honestly? That question didn't leave me alone for weeks. It followed me into grocery stores, into work, into random moments where I'd just zone out staring at nothing. How much of it was real if I was the only one being honest? I started noticing how strange normal life felt after something like that. People laughing in restaurants. Couples arguing over dumb things. Someone holding hands on the street like it meant safety. All of it looked different now. Not fake. Just fragile. I stopped talking about what happened for a while. Not because I was ashamed, but because explaining it to people made it feel smaller than it actually was. Like if I reduced it to a "she cheated" story, it would erase everything else, the lies inside the lies, the alternate timelines, the financial stuff, the pregnancy, the storage unit. It wasn't one betrayal. It was a system of them. A whole structure built over time. One evening, I ran into Derek by accident. Of all people. At a gas station. He looked different. Sober this time. Tired in a calmer way, not chaotic. We stood there for a few seconds not knowing what to do. Then he just said, "I'm sorry." And I believed him more than I expected to. Not because it fixed anything. But because he looked like someone who had also finally stopped spinning. We didn't talk long. Just enough to acknowledge that none of us had walked away from that situation the same. Before leaving, he said something that stuck with me. She was never just lying to you. She was lying to herself first. I didn't respond in the moment. But later, I kept thinking about it. Because it explained something I couldn't quite articulate before. It didn't make what she did okay. But it made it understandable in a way that didn't require me to be part of it anymore. Months passed. The house eventually sold. I moved somewhere smaller. Quieter. No storage unit key. No shared routines. No constant background noise of someone else's double life. Just space. Real space. And slowly, something surprising happened. I stopped replaying everything. Not because I forgot. But because it stopped feeling like something I needed to solve. One night, I found an old photo of us while unpacking a box I hadn't opened yet. We were smiling. Genuinely smiling. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger or sadness looking at it. Just acceptance that two things can be true at once. It mattered. And it still ended. I never heard from her again after that final text months ago. And honestly, I think that's for the best. Because some stories don't get a clean ending. They just stop. And you're left figuring out who you are in the silence that follows. If there's anything I learned from all of it, it's this. Don't ignore the small inconsistencies just because the big picture looks stable. Because sometimes the biggest disasters don't start with explosions. They start with tiny lies that nobody questions until it's too late. A year later, I barely recognized the person I was back then. Not in a dramatic "I've changed completely" way. More like, the edges got smoothed out. I still think about her sometimes. Not in the obsessive way I used to, where every memory felt like a puzzle I needed to solve. Now it's more like flashes. Random moments that show up uninvited and leave just as quickly. Her laughing in the kitchen. The dog sleeping at our feet. The way she used to hum when she thought no one was listening. It doesn't hurt the same anymore. It just exists. I dated briefly after everything ended. Nothing serious. Nothing rushed. I wasn't trying to replace anything, more like testing whether I still knew how to exist in a relationship without second-guessing reality every 5 minutes. It was weird at first. Healthy felt suspicious. Honesty felt almost uncomfortable because I wasn't used to not decoding hidden meanings anymore. But slowly, that started to fade too. One night, I had a long conversation with my therapist about what actually broke me the most in the whole situation. I expected to say the cheating. Or the pregnancy. Or the money. But what came out instead was simpler. The feeling that I was always the last one to know my own life. That's what stuck. Not the events themselves. But the exclusion. The fact that reality had been happening around me without me in it. That took longer to heal than anything else. A few months ago, I got one final message from her. No drama. No explanation. Just. I'm leaving the city. I hope you're okay. I stared at it for a while. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger. Just because there was nothing left to say. No closure needed anymore. I'd already built it myself. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not fighting harder for the marriage at the end. The honest answer is no. Because there was nothing left to fight for that wasn't already gone long before I found out. You can't save something that's been living 2 lives for years. You can only catch up to the truth when it finally collapses into your hands. And if there's one thing I'd tell anyone reading this, really tell them, it's this. If you ever feel like you're constantly confused in your own relationship, don't normalize it. Confusion isn't love. Clarity is. And I wish I had learned that sooner. It's been almost 2 years now. Life doesn't really end up anywhere dramatic after something like that. It just rebuilds itself in quieter ways. Same job. Different apartment. New routines that don't feel like they belong to someone else. Sometimes I catch myself still reacting to things that aren't there anymore. Like checking my partner's phone out of habit when I don't even have a reason to. Or waiting for bad news after a good day. Old reflexes that haven't fully left yet. I don't hate her anymore. That surprised me the most. For a long time I thought forgiveness was something you gave the other person. But eventually I realized it's more about not carrying them around in your head every day. And I got there, slowly. There was one moment that kind of sealed it for me. I was walking home one evening, nothing special, just buying groceries. And I passed a couple arguing softly on a street corner. Nothing serious, just tired voices, normal relationship stuff. A year ago, I think that would have triggered something in me. suspicion, anxiety, overthinking. But that day, I just kept walking. No spiraling. No memories flooding in. Just, present. And I remember thinking, oh. I'm actually okay. Not fixed. Not healed in some perfect way. Just okay enough that the past isn't driving anymore. I still don't know everything that happened in those last months of my marriage. I probably never will. There are gaps I stopped trying to fill because filling them didn't change anything except my own peace. Some truths don't arrive to help you understand. They arrive to help you leave. And leaving was the only thing that ever really mattered in the end. If someone asked me now what I learned from all of it, I wouldn't talk about betrayal or revenge or any of the dramatic parts people expect from stories like this. I'd say something simpler. Don't ignore your intuition when reality starts feeling inconsistent. Don't accept confusion as normal. And don't wait for the full truth to validate what you already feel in your gut. Because by the time everything makes sense, it might already be too late to stay. That's the part one wish someone had told me earlier. Not because it would have saved the relationship. But because it would have saved me time. And sometimes that's the only thing you actually get back. I didn't think I'd ever write anything like this again, but something happened recently that made me realize the story doesn't really end the way you think it will. I saw her. Accidentally. In a different city. At first I wasn't even sure it was her. People change more than you expect when you're no longer part of their life. Hair different. Posture different. The whole presence just, quieter. She was sitting alone outside a cafe, scrolling her phone, like any normal person trying to exist in a normal day. For a few seconds, I just stood there across the street watching. And I expected something to hit me. Anger. Panic. Old memories rushing back. But it didn't. Nothing sharp came up. Just recognition. She looked up at one point and saw me. That moment lasted maybe 3 seconds. Long enough for both of us to realize it was real. She didn't smile. I didn't either. We didn't walk toward each other. We didn't talk. She just nodded once. Small. Almost polite. And I nodded back. That was it. No closure speech. No apology. No confrontation. No final confession. Just two people who used to share a life acknowledging that it existed, and then not touching it again. I kept walking. And for the first time, I understood something I didn't fully get during the chaos of everything that happened. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you stop needing. And I guess that's where I am now. Not the version of me who was trying to understand every lie. Not the version who was waiting for truth to fix anything. Just someone walking past a cafe in a different city, continuing a life that finally belongs only to me. And honestly, that's enough. I thought that would be the last time I ever saw her. It almost was. Almost. A week after that sighting, I got something in the mail. No return address I recognized at first, just my name written in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page. Not a letter trying to reopen anything. Not an apology essay. Not an explanation of the past. Just a short note. I didn't handle any of it the way I should have. I know that now in a way I didn't then. I'm not writing to change anything between us. I just didn't want you to think your version of what was real was wrong. It was real to you. That matters. I'm sorry for what that cost you. That was it. No excuses. No rewriting. No, but you did this too. Just ownership, as late as it was. I didn't feel relief reading it. I didn't feel anger either. It just settled. Like something finally stopped echoing. I folded the page back up and put it in a drawer I rarely open. Not because I want to keep it close. Not because I want to forget it. But because it belongs to a version of my life that I don't need to carry around anymore, but also don't need to erase. That night I went for a walk and realized something simple that I probably should have understood a long time ago. The hardest part was never the betrayal itself. It was learning how to trust my own perception again after it. And now I do. Not perfectly. Not effortlessly. But enough. And that's where this really ends for me. Not with answers. Not with justice. Not with revenge. Just with the ability to keep going without needing the past to resolve itself first.